Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, at Sterling Manor on Crestwood's elite Summit Ridge Road, a single taunt from Adrian Sterling, the pampered heir with a taste for conquest, shatters a quiet evening and ignites something fiercer in his estate assistant, Sophia Davies. Publicly belittled beneath alabaster columns, Sophia swallows the sting, steadied by Isabella Sterling's hushed apology and her own stubborn hope. With calloused hands and a promise she made long ago to build a safe home for herself and her younger sister, Chloe, Sophia turns humiliation into resolve. While Adrian chases trophies of wealth and whispers of a rivalry ripple through Crestwood, Sophia fights a different battle, against invisibility, doubt, and the ceilings others set for her. This is the night a quiet dream hardens into purpose, and the first step of a secret ascent begins in the shadowed corridors of Sterling Manor. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. Can a dream withstand a rich man's ridicule? What happens when someone you've dismissed climbs higher than you ever thought possible? Brace yourself for a humbling reversal of fortune. If you believe in dreams, tap like and subscribe now. You think you could ever own a place like this? The voice, a low, patronizing growl weighted by old money, rolled out from the arched marble entry of Sterling Manor. Perched above the coveted Summit Ridge Road, the estate belonged to Adrian Sterling, the famously indulged heir to a colossal fortune. Eyes alight with anger and mean-spirited amusement, he towered over Sophia Davies, the estate's assistant and caretaker. Their height gap felt symbolic, an obvious snapshot of the distance between their lives. Adrian was tall and broad, wrapped in flawlessly tailored attire that cost more than Sophia's yearly pay. Sophia, slight and neat in a crisp uniform, kept her calloused hands at her sides. She locked down her composure, determined not to give him the satisfaction of a flinch. "I don't see why not, Mr. Sterling," she said, barely above a whisper but steady, her quiet steel cutting through his scorn. "We should all be allowed to dream big, shouldn't we?" Adrian answered with a caustic, derisive laugh that ricocheted off alabaster columns and a soaring ceiling. The sound held no warmth. "Dreams, how funny," he sneered. "Especially from someone who mops floors and dusts paintings." He flicked a hand as if shooing away a gnat. The careless gesture made Sophia's stomach drop. She'd heard the stories. Everyone in Crestwood knew Adrian Sterling for inherited wealth and a self-centered streak. But she hadn't expected such naked cruelty. Why he needed to belittle her didn't matter. The sting of his words drowned out any curiosity. Isabella Sterling, his mother, glided down the sweeping staircase just then, her evening gown whispering against the polished stone. Elegant and composed in her late 50s, she was dressed for the charity event underway. Catching the tension, she took in the scene with kind eyes. "Adrian, dear, you're toast. You'll be late." "Guests are waiting." She cast Sophia a gentle, worried look, an unspoken apology from someone who'd seen outbursts like this too often and couldn't seem to prevent them. Adrian rolled his eyes, snatched a champagne flute from a passing tray, and sauntered toward the ballroom, laughter trailing behind him. When he disappeared, Sophia let out the breath she'd been holding, lungs burning. She sensed the night's indignities were only beginning. She set fresh blooms in crystal vases along the corridor, fragile colors set against the ugliness of what had just happened. Snatches of conversation drifted from the ballroom. Powerful allies bragged about their latest deals, the billions they'd stacked. Adrian's voice rose above the hubbub, crowing about his father's real estate empire and new purchases along Summit Ridge Road. In that moment, Sophia felt sharply aware of her place. An employee in a spotless uniform faded into the background while glittering gowns and heavy jewelry drifted by. She tried to focus, snipping stems, arranging petals, but Adrian's taunts looped in her head. Her mind strayed to the old goal that had carried her through lean years and multiple jobs, through the loss of her parents, a home of her own, solid, safe, a place where she and her younger sister, Chloe, could finally be grounded. It wasn't grand, just honest and secure. Yet Adrian had twisted it into a punchline. Hours later, when the fundraiser dwindled and the last luxury car rolled away, Sophia scrubbed beneath the grand piano in the music room. The air held the faint bite of spilled champagne and dying roses. The piano's dark finish winked under the chandelier, and she traced the familiar veining of the inlaid marble floor. stone she knew by touch after countless shifts. Her back ached. She straightened, reminding herself why she endured the slights and the invisibility. Chloe, their future, the dream. Sophia. Isabella's voice, soft, concerned, broke the hush. Startled, Sophia looked up to see the older woman in the doorway, her gown a sweep of color against the wood, worry etched into her refined features. "Yes, ma'am?" Sophia rose quickly, cleaning cloth still in hand. "I heard what happened in the foyer," Isabella said gently. "I'm sorry. My son's behavior was inexcusable." She pressed her lips together as if holding back more, then sighed. "He can be thoughtless." Her voice lowered. "Take the rest of the night off. You've done more than enough." She met Sophia's gaze. "And please don't let Adrian's cruelty smother your dreams." The unexpected kindness made Sophia's eyes sting. She managed a wavering smile, thanked Isabella, and gathered her supplies. As she crossed the echoing marble toward the small room above the garage, her one refuge, the grounds glittered under starlight. A thin thread of hope tugged in her chest, a fragile flame that refused to die. Maybe in another set of circumstances she could rise above the casual meanness of privilege and the limits of today. She held tight to that spark as sleep crept in, unwilling to let Adrian's barbs take root. Somehow the future felt a fraction less ominous. That humiliating encounter marked a turning point. Sophia had always regarded her position in Adrian Sterling's household, despite its occasional ugliness, as a stepping stone, a way to save, to help Chloe through college out of state, and to observe the unspoken rules of wealth. But Adrian's contempt had struck flint against steel. Defiance flared bright and steady. She would not accept anyone's verdict on her worth, not his, not anyone's. She wasn't consigned to polishing floors forever. While the mansion slept and Adrian dreamed up his next purchase, Sophia made a quiet promise. Her ambitions would not be abandoned, however impossible they seemed to people like him. She'd prove her value to Adrian Sterling, yes, but more importantly to herself. She'd show those who equated success with status that dreams belong to everyone, and that perseverance, integrity, and hard work are currencies no fortune can outbuy. And so the secret path began, one that would press her resolve at every bend and send her toward a future she couldn't yet imagine. In the shadows of Sterling Manor, the first moves of that plan took shape. At dawn, birdsong trilled outside her window, a cheerful counterpoint to last night's heaviness. Sophia lay still for a beat, replaying Adrian's mocking laugh. Usually she would bury moments like that under the routine, pretended they didn't hurt. Not this time. Something in her had tempered, stronger, unbending. She rose sore but purposeful. Work awaited at Sterling Manor, and she took pride in doing it well. Dressed in her neatly pressed uniform, a symbol of where she was, not where she'd end, she entered the great house. The foyer still wore the party's leftovers. Stray flutes, a lace of confetti, roses surrendering in crystal. She got to it, methodical, precise, while her thoughts stitched together plans beneath a calm surface. Adrian was blessedly absent, though agitated voices pulsed from his office, more negotiations, more properties. Staff whispers said Adrian was locked in a bitter race with an old rival, determined to snap up every luxury home along Crestwood's Summit Ridge Road, the city's crown jewel. Sophia refused to let his obsession get under her skin. She scrubbed the last glitter from the marble and reminded herself that her contest was different. A contest against doubt, against narrow expectations, against the limits others set for her. Later, while she dusted the gilt frames in the stately gallery, generations of Sterlings staring out from a life far from her own, Isabella Sterling surprised her. The older woman stepped in quietly, her long dress whispering against the polished floor, her presence a calming force. "Sophia, I'd like to offer you something." Sophia froze on the step stool, her hand hovering over a gilded frame. She turned carefully, curiosity brimming in her eyes, wondering what the kind Mrs. Sterling could possibly want to offer her. Veronica was holding a small pamphlet, a simple advertisement for a local business development workshop. "This might interest you," she said gently, extending the pamphlet toward Sophia. Sophia took it with trembling fingers, scanning the text. It was an announcement for a free seminar on how to start a small business, organized by the Crestwood Community Center. Something fluttered inside Sophia's chest. Excitement maybe, or at least the possibility of it, a tiny spark of hope ignited by Isabella's thoughtfulness. She had never truly seen herself as an entrepreneur. Not in the traditional sense, but she had always believed in her ability to learn, adapt, and work hard, harder than anyone she knew. "Thank you, ma'am," Sophia murmured, her voice threaded with genuine gratitude, her eyes meeting Isabella's kind gaze. "To appreciate this more than I can express." Isabella Sterling smiled, and for a moment her gaze took on a faraway, wistful quality, as though glimpsing her younger self, her own unfulfilled dreams in Sophia's hopeful eyes. "I do hope it helps Sophia," she said, pressing Sophia's hand gently. A gesture of solidarity that transcended their employer-employee relationship. "You deserve better than being ridiculed for wanting a future. Everyone deserves a future, Sophia, a chance." For the next few weeks, Sophia juggled her demanding household responsibilities at Sterling Manor, with attending the evening seminar sessions at the community center. It was exhausting, demanding, but every bit of knowledge, every lesson learned about business planning, budgeting, marketing, and the importance of building relationships stoked the flame of her ambitions, turning the tiny spark into a steady burning fire. She would return to the small room above the garage late at night, her notebook brimming with new ideas, with diagrams, with lists of contacts, her mind buzzing with possibilities. Meanwhile, Adrian Sterling remained blissfully unaware of her pursuits, too consumed with tracking his real estate conquests and boasting about them at lavish dinner parties. He was living in his own world, a world of numbers, properties, and outdoing rivals. Once or twice, Sophia saw him in passing, and every time he offered a thinly veiled taunt, a cruel reminder of his perceived superiority. "Still here, Lily? If you're so confident you'll own a mansion, shouldn't you be off doing better things, chasing that big dream?" She never rose to his bait, though. She just smiled politely and went about her tasks, dusting, polishing, tidying, all the while secure in the knowledge that she was doing better things. Only it was happening in secrecy in the quiet hours away from his condescending gaze. If Adrienne ever discovered she had dreams beyond being his docile, invisible estate assistant who knew how else he might try to crush her spirit. The mystery of her double life, her hidden ambition, was a secret she guarded fiercely. One evening, Sophia showcased her determination more boldly, more publicly than ever before. After finishing her chores at Sterling Manor, she slipped downtown for an event the seminar organizers were hosting. A pitch night for budding entrepreneurs, a chance to present their business ideas to a small audience, to potential investors. Sophia climbed onto the small stage, her heart hammering against her ribs, her palms slick with sweat, and pitched an idea for a luxury property management service, an agency that specialized in top-tier discreet service, one that would directly cater to the wealthy residences of Crestwood, to people like Adrian Sterling himself, though she didn't mention him by name. Even though the crowd was small, perhaps only a few dozen people, Sophia's words resonated with quiet passion and undeniable authenticity. She spoke of her first-hand knowledge gained from years of working in opulent homes like Sterling Manor, of how the well-to-do expected their households to be managed with efficiency, with respect, with absolute discretion, and she laid out her vision for how her agency, once it got off the ground, could revolutionize the concept of luxury home management, providing impeccable service while also treating its employees with dignity and respect, a stark contrast to her own experiences. She managed to impress a local bank representative who was in attendance, a man who understood the value of hard work and a clear vision. He later approached her, his expression one of genuine interest, to discuss the possibility of a small business loan. When Sophia walked out of that community center that night, walking back to the bus stop under the glow of the streetlights, she felt lighter, as though a vast, previously invisible horizon had suddenly opened up before her. That fresh hope, that intoxicating sense of possibility embraced her, temporarily eclipsing the memory of Adrian's sneering presence back at the mansion. She could practically envision a time when she would walk away from front doors like Sterling Manor for good. Her head held high, her own boss, no regrets in her wake. And yet, even with that exhilarating hope, Sophia also knew there was a long, perilous road ahead. Dreams and potential loans, she understood, could only take her so far. She needed unwavering perseverance, a dash of luck, and perhaps, just perhaps, an ally or two along the way. The mystery of how she would secure the funding, how she would turn this possibility into a reality, still loomed large. Within a few months, fueled by determination and sheer grit, Sophia's dream began edging closer toward reality. She spent her daytime hours methodically fulfilling her housekeeping duties at Sterling Manor, her presence quiet and unassuming, and her nights drafting detailed business proposals, financial projections, and marketing. He lands. With each passing day, she built a quiet but solid network of contacts, former maids, chauffeurs, gardeners, and other skilled service workers from wealthy households across Crestwood, who shared her belief in a more professional, more dignified approach to employment in the luxury service sector. They saw her vision, her work ethic, and believed in her potential. Adrian, meanwhile, seemed to spiral deeper into his competitive frenzy, his obsession with outdoing his rival consuming him entirely. His desire to be the undisputed king of Summit Ridge Road led him to take ever bolder, ever more reckless financial risks, snapping up property after property, leveraging his assets to the breaking point. Gloating about his acquisitions became the centerpiece of his existence. He'd invite high-profile friends over for lavish soirees, not just to entertain, but simply to brag about the new estates he was adding to his burgeoning portfolio, including several along Summit Ridge Road close to Sterling Manor. Isabella Sterling grew visibly uneasy about her son's reckless spending, her refined features often edged with worry, but Adrian, blinded by pride and ambition, dismissed her concerns with a wave of his hand, confident that his seemingly unlimited resources, his family name would always protect him, would always hold out. One evening, Sophia had just finished polishing the silverware in the dining hall, each piece gleaming under the chandelier's light. When Adrian stormed in, his face flushed with fury, his phone clutched tightly in his manicured hand, a stark contrast to Sophia's work-worn hands. "Where is my mother?" he demanded, his eyes wild with frustration and rage, the sound echoing through the grand hall. She stepped out. "Sir?" Sophia answered calmly, her voice steady despite the sudden surge of apprehension. Sensing the volatile energy radiating from him, she said she'd be back in the evening. Ridiculous. Adrian paced the length of the long dining table, each agitated stride echoing against the marble floor, the sound jarring in the opulent silence. "I told her we needed to discuss an urgent matter regarding my next purchase. Something crucial." He stopped abruptly, glancing at Sophia, narrowing his eyes, his gaze sharp and accusing. "I know you talk to her, Lily. You tell her everything. If you see her, you tell her I'm not playing around. This is important." Sophia quirked an eyebrow slightly, an almost imperceptible gesture of defiance, trying to remain respectful, professional, despite his overbearing presence. "Of course, sir, don't." "Of course, sir." "Me," he snapped, his voice rising, his anger seemingly finding a new target in her quiet composure, and then, as though a second wave of pure, unadulterated rage rushed through him, fueled by his own frustrations. He turned on her, his words a brutal, unwarranted attack. "What do you know about anything? You're just a housemaid picking up crumbs and dust. You clean up after my parties. I doubt you even have 2 pennies to rub together, let alone understand business or investments." Sophia felt her stomach twist violently, the familiar pang of humiliation and anger threatening to overwhelm her. But she refused to recoil, refused to shrink back like she used to. She stood taller, stiffened her spine, and met his furious gaze evenly. "I might not have your level of wealth, Mr. Sterling," she responded, her voice quiet but unwavering, resonating with a newfound strength. "But I've worked hard for everything I do have. Every single penny, every single accomplishment." Her measured tone, her quiet courage in the face of his fury was a sharp jab to Adrian's inflated ego, a defiance he hadn't expected from his seemingly meek estate assistant. "Ha!" he shouted, a harsh dismissive sound. "Keep dreaming, Lily. If you want to waste your time on impossible fantasies, on ridiculous notions of grandeur, be my guest." His dismissive, echoing laughter left an acrid taste in the air as he stormed off, presumably to find his mother. Time seemed to freeze around Sophia in the aftermath of his outburst. She battled the pangs of humiliation and anger that threatened to overwhelm her, to drown her in despair. But she clung fiercely to the knowledge that she was building something real, something tangible, something that in time could silence his cruel laughter forever, a venture that held the promise of altering her destiny. The mystery of his impending downfall, unbeknownst to him, was already in motion. That same night, later that evening, after the mansion had settled into a false calm, Sophia received an urgent, unexpected call from the bank representative who'd taken an interest in her business plan. Her heart hammering in her throat, she ducked into her small garage room, her sanctuary, to speak privately away from the prying ears of the main house. Miss Turner, the representative began, his voice professional, but carrying a hint of urgency. The board is reviewing your loan request. They've asked for more detailed financial statements and a comprehensive market analysis. They're also suggesting you provide some personal collateral if you want to significantly improve your chances of approval. Sophia's fingers tightened around her phone, her knuckles white. Collateral. She had some savings, yes, hard-earned money tucked away, but collateral against a loan that would allow her to start a business. All I have is my car, she admitted quietly, her voice barely a whisper, the truth a heavy weight in the silence of her small room. And a little bit in my account, it's not much. That might not be enough, Miss Turner, the representative warned gently, though his voice remained kind, understanding the difficulty of her position. For the amount you're requesting, the board would prefer more substantial collateral. Perhaps consider a co-signer, someone who can vouch for your business plan, for your character. Thank you, Sophia murmured, her voice thick with disappointment, ending the call with a heavy heart. She glanced around at her small, tidy room, the familiar posters on the wall, the neatly made bed. Her gaze fell on a framed photo on her bedside table. A smiling picture of her younger sister, Chloe, who lived in a different state, attending college, pursuing her own dreams. The moment their parents died years ago, Sophia had vowed to help Chloe through school, to provide for her whatever it took, even if it meant putting her own dreams on hold. Now to see her ambitions, her chance at a better future, with her at the doorstep of the bank's demands for collateral, felt like a cruel, bitter joke, a twist of fate she couldn't overcome alone. The mystery of how to bridge this financial gap loomed large. Faced with the daunting prospect of losing her shot at a business loan, of seeing her dream fade back into the realm of impossible fantasies, Sophia made a difficult, courageous decision. She mustered her courage, swallowed her pride, and approached Isabella Sterling after dinner the following day. The older woman was in the library, sitting near a crackling fireplace, lost in thought as she perused complex estate paperwork, the firelight casting flickering shadows on her refined features. Mrs. Sterling, Sophia began, her voice trembling slightly, trying to keep it steady, trying to appear confident despite the hammering of her heart. I need a favor. A very big favor. Isabella Sterling looked up, removing her reading glasses, her expression one of gentle inquiry. What is it, my dear? Please sit. Sophia explained the situation haltingly at first, the words tumbling out in a rush of nerves. She described her luxury property management concept, the loan she had nearly qualified for, and the unexpected, devastating collateral requirement that was threatening to derail everything. When she finally managed to ask Isabella if she would consider being her co-signer, perhaps provide some form of collateral for the loan, a silence fell over the room, broken only by the crackling fire. Sophia felt her heart hammering against her ribs, the sound deafening in the quiet library, bracing herself for a polite refusal, for the confirmation that she was indeed asking for the impossible. Isabella Sterling remained silent for several moments, her eyes reflecting a swirl of emotions, surprise, contemplation, and then something akin to profound understanding and respect. Then softly, her voice filled with a warmth that immediately eased Sophia's anxiety. She said, I've seen how hard you work, Sophia, for years. I know your character. I know your integrity. I believe in you. A small smile touched her lips. I would be honored to help. She paused, her lips pursed in thought. However, my assets are heavily entwined with Adrienne's father's estate with the Sterling Hotel Group. I need to review my finances and consult with a lawyer to see precisely how I can do this, how I can co-sign without raising Adrienne's suspicion, given his current financial dealings. But I will find a way, Sophia. A rush of overwhelming gratitude and profound relief coursed through Sophia, so powerful it brought fresh tears to her eyes. Thank you, Mrs. Sterling, she managed, her voice thick with emotion. I can't even begin to express. Isabella lifted a hand gently, stopping her. Don't try, Sophia. Just make your dream a reality. That's how you thank me. I believe in what you're doing. And if for some reason this doesn't work out, we will find another way together. For the first time in a long while, Sophia wept tears of pure gratitude. Not in the lonely confines of her room, but in front of another person, a person who saw her, who believed in her, who was willing to help. The darkness of the library glowed softly from the fire's embers. And in that warmth, in the presence of Isabella Sterling's unexpected kindness and support, Sophia felt the universe tilt in her favor. Even if the path ahead was still murky, still riddled with challenges, she was no longer alone in facing them. The mystery of the path ahead felt less daunting now. In the months that followed, Isabella Sterling plunged into discreet negotiations with her legal team, working to see how best to co-sign Sophia's business loan without raising Adrian's suspicion. The vast Sterling Manor, typically a place of routine and quiet efficiency, buzzed with hushed rumors about Isabella's private meetings and frequent urgent phone calls behind closed doors. Adrian, ever paranoid, began to suspect something was afoot, sensing a shift in the carefully controlled financial landscape of the family estate. Though he was too busy orchestrating yet another ambitious real estate deal, too consumed with outdoing his rival along Summit Ridge Road to investigate thoroughly, Sophia, for her part, continued to manage her duties at the manor, her presence quiet and unassuming, all the while quietly preparing the legal and operational foundation for her new company, which she intended to call Horizon Home Services. The name she felt hinted at the vast possibilities ahead, at the unwavering belief that horizons, that dreams were for everyone, not just the wealthy, not just people like Adrian. She had already formed alliances with talented but underappreciated home service professionals across Crestwood. Experienced housekeepers, skilled gardeners, meticulous handymen, people with a passion for detail and a deep desire for respect in the workplace. Her soon-to-be staff was comprised of individuals who shared her values and believed in her vision. One late afternoon, as the golden light of sunset streamed through the tall windows of the manor, Sophia found Isabella Sterling sitting by a large window that overlooked the mansion's manicured gardens. Her expression a mixture of triumph and pensive relief. She turned upon Sophia's quiet approach and extended a document, her hand trembling slightly with emotion. "Congratulations, Sophia," Isabella whispered, her eyes misting over with genuine happiness for her. "The bank approved the loan was a solid amount, enough to truly kickstart your dream. You did it." Sophia let out a trembling sigh of relief. The tension she had carried for months finally easing. She held the document as though it were a sacred artifact, the culmination of years of hard work and unwavering belief. I don't know how to thank you, Mrs. Sterling," she managed, tears brimming in her own eyes. Isabella reached out and squeezed Sophia's hand gently, her gaze kind and encouraging. "Make your dream a reality, Sophia. Build something beautiful. That's how you thank me. Build your horizon." The night was clear and bright under the moonlight as Sophia drifted back to her small living space above the garage, her heart buoyant, filled with a joy and hope she hadn't felt in years. She thought about Chloe, about the stable future she could finally provide for her sister, about the sense of accomplishment she longed to feel. For so many years, Sophia had served others, quietly supporting their lives. Now she was taking the bold, terrifying step of becoming a leader in her own right. Yet, as with all turning points, as with all dreams on the verge of becoming reality, a storm was brewing, not just for Sophia, but for the Sterling family. Adrian's reckless spending, his relentless pursuit of outdoing his rival along Summit Ridge Road, was beginning to catch up with him. The market had started to shift, a downturn he hadn't anticipated, and the bank that had once readily funded his expansions was now requesting substantial proof of liquidity, of stable assets. His overspending combined with the market's downturn threatened to unravel his empire. Late-night phone calls laced with panic and frustration reverberated through the mansion's halls. Adrian's raised voice echoing, yelling at his financial advisors. The tenor of his voice, laced with a desperation he usually reserved for the most cutthroat negotiations. Rumors spread like wildfire among the mansion staff, whispers that Adrian was teetering on the edge. Foreclosures threatened on some of his most recent, highly leveraged acquisitions, and a scandalous lawsuit loomed, alleging that he had engaged in improper, perhaps even illegal, deals in his frenzy to acquire properties. All the while, Adrian's infamous pride and arrogance refused to let him seek help, refused to let him scale back his spending, refused to let him admit he had made a mistake. He had severed ties with most of his father's original, more cautious advisors, believing them too slow, too risk-averse. He was alone in his spiraling crisis. Finally, one fateful day, Adrian Sterling's meticulously built house of cards collapsed. The bank called in his debts, He was forced to sell off a significant chunk of his properties, including some of his most prized possessions, to cover mounting debts and legal fees. The news exploded across the financial pages of Crestwood, splashed across headlines. Sterling heir's empire in peril. Summit Ridge Road king facing foreclosure. Sterling fortune dwindles amidst reckless deals. The once invincible millionaire became the subject of hushed speculation, some mocking his downfall, others expressing a detached form of sympathy. The tension inside Sterling Manor reached a breaking point when Adrian, in his desperate scramble to understand his financial ruin, discovered that his mother, Isabella Sterling, had quietly signed Asa guarantor for Sophia's business loan, leveraging a portion of her own assets. Bursting into Isabella's study, his face contorted with rage and disbelief, he thundered, "How could you do this, Mother? How could you use our money? Money that could be saved for our family, for our legacy, to help the help without consulting me first?" Isabella, who usually maintained a calm, composed demeanor even in the face of Adrian's outbursts, squared her shoulders, her gaze steady and unwavering, refusing to be intimidated by his fury. "I made the decision, Adrian, because Sophia deserves a chance to build something real, something honest." Her voice lowered, filled with a quiet disappointment that cut deeper than any shout. "You have squandered millions, perhaps even billions, Adrian, on reckless ventures, on pointless competitions, on proving you're better than everyone else. Meanwhile, Sophia, she is building a business with heart, with integrity, with hard work, and with a genuine desire to help others. There is more value in that than in all the properties on Summit Ridge Road." Adrian clenched his fists, his face darkening further with uncontrolled rage and a sense of profound betrayal. "You realize this is betrayal, Mother, don't you? You chose her over me, over the family name." "No, Adrian," Isabella said, her voice calm but firm, her gaze holding his. "It's me reminding you that the world doesn't revolve around your whims, that there are people in this world whose worth isn't measured by their bank account. That character, integrity, and hard work, those things have value." With a quiet authority, she dismissed him from the study. Turning back to her papers, Adrian stormed out, practically seething with fury and a humiliation he hadn't known until that moment. In the hall, he crossed paths with Sophia. Though every fiber of her being told her to step aside, to become invisible as she had done for years, Sophia stiffened her spine, held her head high, and met this furious gaze, a quiet strength in her eyes. For a brief moment, Adrian seemed taken aback, the rage in his eyes flickering with a flicker of surprise, as if he finally recognized that Sophia was no longer the timid girl he could bully at will, no longer the invisible helper. But his pride, his deeply ingrained arrogance, quickly reasserted itself. He only scoffed and brushed past her, muttering something under his breath about the meddling help and ungrateful people. Everything changed in the weeks that followed. Adrian's once impressive fortune dwindled further, forcing him to sell off one of his last prized possessions. The mansion and estate next door to Sterling Manor on Summit Ridge Road, the crown jewel of his recent acquisitions, a breathtaking property, larger in some ways than even Sterling Manor itself, with immaculate landscaping and prime lake views. Adrian loathed letting it go, seeing it as the ultimate symbol of his failure. But he had no other choice if he wanted to stay afloat financially, if he wanted to preserve any part of his remaining wealth. Meanwhile, discreetly, quietly, Sophia's company was finally official. Horizon Home Services. She took on her first set of clients, wealthy families in Crestwood, who were lured by her professional, discreet approach and the promise of impeccable service delivered by skilled, respectful professionals. Each success fueled her confidence, and she devoted herself tirelessly to ensuring every client received the highest standard of care, proving that her model worked. Unknown to Adrian, Sophia had, through Isabella Sterling's quiet influence and extensive network, been introduced to a circle of well-to-do acquaintances, all seeking a top-tier, trustworthy agency to manage their opulent homes. Like dominoes falling, referrals followed and her business grew steadily. Yet an unforeseen, almost unbelievable twist arrived soon after. An anonymous buyer expressed keen interest in purchasing the mansion next door to Adrian's, the one he had been forced to sell. Whispers floated through Crestwood's elite circles that it was one with fresh capital, an individual who had found unexpected success in a niche service sector. Adrian was livid that he had to wait in line for the final negotiations. Furious that someone else was about to claim his prize, He wanted desperately to make a last-minute effort to retain the property, to salvage some shred of pride from the ashes of his financial meltdown. But the time for negotiations for second chances had passed. The anonymous buyer arrived with a firm offer, a certified check for the full amount cash. The deal was sealed swiftly and quietly. Adrian heard the news from his realtor, the confirmation a bitter pill to swallow. Then with one fateful phone call from the realtor, Heist's entire world already teetering turned completely upside down. "Mr. Sterling," the realtor said, his voice hesitant, "the new owner insists you vacate any items you still have in that mansion storage room by the end of the week. They plan to move in next week." Immediately, Adrian was seething, incandescent with rage and humiliation that someone had so easily snatched the property he adored but could no longer afford to keep. Someone who was now moving in right next door. A constant, unavoidable reminder of his downfall. He refused to discover who the mysterious buyer was. The humiliation of losing the property was enough. He didn't need a face behind it. A face he might know. Moving trucks, large and impersonal, rumbled down the exclusive Summit Ridge Road, pulling into the circular driveway of the neighboring estate, the mansion Adrian had been forced to sell. Adrian watched from his window at Sterling Manor. His face grim as furniture and boxes disappeared into the house that should still be his. Although incensed, a burning, unbearable curiosity gnawed at him. Who had the audacity, the means, and the sheer nerve to move in right next door to him, practically taunting him with a mansion he believed deep down should still belong to a Sterling. Later that afternoon, unable to bear the suspense, unable to quell the gnawing curiosity, Adrian finally mustered the courage to take a walk around his own property, just hoping to catch a glimpse of the new neighbor, to put a face to his latest humiliation. He stood by the low stone fence that divided the two states, scanning the bustling activity next door. Uniformed employees carrying new furniture inside. Gardeners trimming hedges. A discreet security detail posted by the front gate. At that moment, a sleek black town car pulled into the circular driveway next door. The driver, a young man in a sharp suit, opened the passenger door and a woman stepped out. Her poise, her elegant suit, her confident bearing made Adrian do a double take. His jaw practically hit the ground, his eyes widening in utter stunned disbelief. It was Sophia Davies, his former estate assistant, his housemaid. She was dressed in an elegant, perfectly fitted suit, her dark hair swept up in a polished, sophisticated style, carrying a sleek leather portfolio, exuding an aura of self-assurance, of quiet power he had never seen in her before. He couldn't believe his eyes. It was impossible. Stomach churning, his mind reeling, Adrian strode over to the fence, his voice raw with disbelief, with sputtering indignation. "You," he spluttered, his voice cracking, the sound shrill and desperate. "What? What in God's name is going on here?" Sophia turned, her composure unwavering, her dark eyes meeting his across the low stone fence. For a moment, just a fleeting second, her eyes flickered with the memory of all the times he had mocked her, of his cruel laughter echoing in the grand foyer, of his dismissive words in the dining hall. Then she replied calmly, her voice steady, carrying a quiet, undeniable authority. "I own this mansion now, Mr. Sterling," she said, her gaze unwavering, her voice clear. "This estate I'm moving in." His mouth opened and closed wordlessly like a fish out of water. The shock, the humiliation, the sheer impossibility of it all stole his breath. Eventually he found his voice, though it wavered with a desperate need to understand. "That's impossible. How could you possibly afford a place like this?" She leveled her gaze at him, her expression calm, her voice factual, devoid of triumph or cruelty, simply stating the truth. "Hard work, Mr. Sterling. Dedication, perseverance, and yes, a little help from people who believed in me. People who saw my potential, not just my position." She paused, a small significant silence hanging in the air between them. "I had a dream. Remember, Mr. Sterling? A big dream. You ridiculed it. You told me it was impossible. But now here we are." Adrian's cheeks reened, his usual haughtiness crumbling around him like the walls of his collapsing empire. But you were just my housemaid, my assistant. You cleaned my floors." Sophia let out a soft laugh, a sound neither cruel nor triumphant, simply matter of fact, a statement of reality. "You never saw me as anything else, did you, Mr. Sterling? You only saw the uniform, the job title. But I learned, I studied, I worked harder than you could ever imagine. I built a business, a luxury property management service that has grown to serve multiple wealthy families here in Crestwood, discreetly, professionally, A hint of a smile touched her lips. In fact, your mother, Mrs. Sterling, she gave me the final push, the final help I needed to secure the funding. She believed in my dream. He stared at Hera, the elegant woman standing confidently on her own property, at a total loss for words, for understanding. But you, his voice trailed off, overshadowed by the overwhelming wave of realization that while he had been squandering his fortune, obsessed with appearances and shallow rivalries, Sophia had been quietly, diligently building something real, something successful, something that had now surpassed him. He was the one left behind, his own fortune in disarray, his pride shattered. Just then, Isabella Sterling emerged from the front door of Sophia's new estate, crossing the circular driveway with a warm smile on her face. Her presence a confirmation of Sophia's words, a silent rebuke to Adrian's arrogance. "Adrian," she greeted curtly, acknowledging her son with a brief, cool nod before turning to Sophia. "Sophia, dear, need any help settling in?" "I think I've got it covered, Mrs. Sterling," Sophia replied, her voice warm with gratitude, her gaze meeting Isabella's with profound respect. "But I appreciate the offer." Truly, seeing his own mother so at ease in Sophia's new domain, a domain that should have been his rattled Adrian further than anything else. Emotions warred on his face. Confusion, indignation, disbelief, and perhaps, just perhaps, a fleeting, agonizing hint of respect, of humility. He never thought he'd feel for his estate assistant. He took a step back from the fence, as though physically repelled by the sheer force of the humbling truth, by the undeniable reality of Sophia's rise. The following days passed in a blur for Adrian. Sophia finalized the move into her new home. The beautiful estate, a tangible emblem of everything she had earned through sweat, tears, unwavering determination, and the belief of a kind benefactor. She was no stranger to the tasks required to manage a property of this magnitude. After all, she had once maintained the vast Sterling Manor, but now she was the owner, and she outsourced many responsibilities to her own well-trained, well-compensated staff, proud to show them that upward mobility, that achieving your dreams was possible if you dared to pursue it with integrity and hard work. As for Adrian, the constant neighborly view across the low stone fence was a physical stinging reminder of his downfall and Sophia's ascent. No longer did he tower over Sophia, commanding her with insults or belittling her dreams. Instead, he found himself grappling with a failing empire, with mounting debts and shattered pride. While Sophia, the woman he had mocked, had risen to the very status, the very level of success he believed belonged exclusively to people like him. The mystery of his own arrogance, his blindness, was painfully revealed. Eventually, battered by reality, humbled by the undeniable truth living right next door, Adrian decided he needed to speak with Sophia Wanwa, away from the judging eyes of the neighborhood. He swallowed his considerable pride, walked the short distance to the fence, and this time, instead of spluttering demands, he rang the doorbell of the mansion he had once owned. A courteous staff member, one of Sophia's own employees, showed him inside to a sunlit sitting room where Sophia was having tea, looking calm and composed, completely at ease in her new surroundings. Adrian stood awkwardly by the door, unsure of how to proceed, the silence heavy between them. Sophia set her teacup down slowly and looked up, her expression unreadable, neither triumphant nor cold, simply present. "Mr. Sterling." Adrian began, struggling for words. The apology lodged in his throat, difficult to voice after years of arrogance. "I want to say I'm sorry, Sophia." A flicker of surprise crossed Sophia's features, perhaps the faintest hint of emotion showing in her eyes. She remained silent, letting him continue, letting him grapple with the weight of his confession. "I was cruel," he admitted, his voice low, filled with regret. "I was arrogant. I was wrong. You deserve more than my apology, I'm sure. But I truly am sorry for the things I said, for how I treated you." Sophia's gaze softened slightly, a hint of the kindness that had always been a part of her returning. She gestured for him to sit on the sofa opposite her, inviting him into her space, a space he had once owned. "Apology accepted, Mr. Sterling," she said gently, her voice quiet but firm. "The past is the past, but the future is what we make of it." Regardless of where we started, Adrian nodded, a heavy sigh escaping his lips, the reality of that simple statement washing over him with the force of a wave. "I am facing a lot of struggles right now, Sophia. Everything I thought was untouchable. It's gone, or it's going." She offered him a small sympathetic nod, her expression one of understanding, not pity. I know what it's like, Mr. Sterling. To feel like life's path is blocked by circumstance. To feel like the world is against you. Her gaze met his directly, filled with a quiet strength. But you can still change, Mr. Sterling. You can still build something new if you choose to, if you're willing to work for it. A tentative hope flickered in Adrian's eyes. A flicker of possibility he hadn't allowed himself to feel in months. Perhaps for the first time he recognized the formidable strength and resilience in Sophia. The empathetic leadership that not only allowed her to rise but also opened doors and created opportunities for others. In that quiet exchange, in the sunlit sitting room of the mansion that had once been his, Sophia also felt a sense of profound closure. Her ultimate triumph wasn't just about acquiring the mansion next door, about proving Adrian wrong. It was about proving that a determined spirit fueled by resilience, kindness, hard work, and an unwavering belief in the value of every person could break through barriers that once seemed insurmountable and rewrite a destiny. She had believed wholeheartedly in her dreams, in the quiet strength of her own worth even when a spoiled millionaire had mocked her. Now that belief was a living testament for everyone, including Adrian Sterling, to see. And so ends the story of how a spoiled millionaire heir mocked his housemaid's dreams, only to discover her as the proud owner of the mansion next door. It's a story not just of wealth lost and gained, but of faith, hard work, humility, and the true measure of a person's worth. It's a poignant reminder that underestimating someone's potential, looking down on those you deem beneath you, can lead to the most unexpected, the most humbling surprise of your life. If you find yourself inspired by Sophia's incredible journey, remember her resilience, her determination, her quiet strength. Remember that a dream backed by perseverance, integrity, and a willingness to work harder than anyone else can overcome obstacles that once seemed insurmountable. The mystery of your own potential is waiting to be unlocked. Thank you for joining us on this emotional ride. If you want more uplifting narratives and powerful life lessons, be sure to subscribe to the Soul-Stirring Stories channel, where we bring you tales that touch the heart, ignite the spirit, and remind us that true success is measured not by the size of your bank account, but by the size of your dreams and the strength of your character. Never stop dreaming,